Hi guys, Goffy here, and in the past I've been known to say that if you're going to pick a 28mm lens, you might as well pick a slow one. There's no point having a big, heavy, bulky 28mm lens because it's got f1.4, because at the end of the day you're picking up a 28mm lens to get the environment in it. And if you're going to shoot at f1.4, what's the point? And that means in the past I really loved my Leica 28mm Elmarit f2.8 lens. I think that lens was like the perfect compromise of a small, compact, tiny lens, so all the conveniences of having a lightweight lens, combined with f2.8 being that point where it's fast enough that you can do what you want with it, but it's not too fast that you're gaining a whole bunch of unnecessary weight. However, recently I picked up a lens, or been given a lens, more on that in a little bit, that kind of pushes that logic even further. This here is the TTArtisan 28mm F5.6. Now, let's get the elephant out of the room quick. Yes, this design is a copy of a Leica lens from the past. Leica have also done a reissue of that lens as well on M mount more recently, and the M mount version costs 2,000 something. The old LTM mount version, I think you can pick them up for around £1,000, and this comes in at a few hundred. This lens does actually have a completely different optical design compared to the two Leica lenses, and I don't really mind that too much because at the end of the day, it's actually the form factor that intrigues me most about this tiny little f5.6 lens. For full disclosure, TTArtisans did send me this lens to keep and review, but all words in this video are my own. They have absolutely no control over this video whatsoever. So let's dive in then. Let's have a little bit of a talk about whether or not going even slower than f2.8 for even more of a kind of size weight saving is worth it, and if this quirky design actually has any merit. So why on earth then does this lens look like it does? Its design is a little bit unconventional. It doesn't look like the traditional design that we're used to. Now the kind of obvious one, I guess, is the fact this lens is really small and tiny. The mount of this lens actually takes up quite a bit of its overall size, and if you put this on an M10 or an M6, the side profile of the camera actually ends up being really small and makes it really convenient to slip into a bag. But the main reason that this lens is designed like it is all to do with something called zone focusing. If you don't really know what that means, that is when a lot of people will set their camera focus to infinity and then set their aperture to something quite small to get an awful lot of the image in focus. The idea is, using this lens, you can turn your already quite expensive Leica camera into a ridiculously expensive point and shoot. It sounds a little bit ridiculous, but for some areas of photography, this is something that people do an awful lot of. Street photography is probably the main one. And when it comes to the design, the reason that it's kind of made for zone focusing is the fact that this camera has an infinity lock. That means that when you move the lens around to infinity, the focus ring kind of locks into place and you can't move it. And like I said, the idea is if you stick it to f8, that means everything from like 2 meters to infinity is in that kind of range of what we kind of call acceptable focus. It might not be tack sharp, but your eye kind of perceives it as being in focus and therefore part of the image. So next up then, let's talk about f5.6, the fastest that this lens offers. And I do think for me personally, f5.6 is past that point of being versatile. I found with the Elmarit at f2.8, if you're going to take a picture of somebody you want to portrait, you still get enough background separation that your subject is pretty obvious. Where with this, f5.6, there's basically no background separation at all. So for me, f5.6 I think it's just made it a little bit too kind of unversatile for my own personal use. There is another thing as well with this lens in particular that feeds into that even more, and that's the fact that the close focusing distance is 1 meter, which means you can't get kind of closer to your subject to try and push the background even further out of focus. And for me, that 1 meter bit actually became a bit of a problem. It just became a little bit annoying. For street photography, again, it's not going to matter, and if that's your main purpose of this lens, you're very unlikely to get closer than 1 meter away from your subject. But for me, even though it's only 30 centimeters more than the typical 70 centimeters of a rangefinder, I just found myself bumping into it all the time. And at 28mm, it means you can't get close to things at all. The other downside of shooting a lens that is f5.6 is going to be your ISO. You're going to have to lean into your ISO a little bit more than maybe you're used to. And when it comes to shooting film on my Leica M6, one evening it did cause me to stop shooting, and I actually swapped onto one of my faster lenses just so I could finish off that evening. So for film it caused me a problem. Digital on my M10, I don't really shoot in bad light all that often, and I don't think kind of leaning into ISO with a digital camera really causes you that many issues. It obviously meant I was shooting a little bit higher than I normally do, but didn't really cause me any problems. So if you guys are actually interested in this lens in particular, a quick rundown from me then. I was actually really surprised how much I enjoyed using this lens. It is a lot of fun to use. I think as long as you know what you're buying in terms of the form factor, I don't think you'll actually be disappointed. I found f5.6 plenty sharp enough. I think the only problem I found with the lens is if you shoot slightly off of a light source, you get quite a bad kind of flaring kind of issue in the middle of the frame, a little bit of ghosting in the middle. I think the hood for this lens is a bit ridiculous. It just looks bonkers. I don't think you'd ever actually use it. I get why they've done it. It matches that classical look, but at the same time, it makes the lens twice as big as it is, and the main selling point of this lens is that small compact size. For me personally, that 1 meter close focusing distance rather than 70 centimeters was actually something I ran into a lot, and it kind of ruins the versatility of this lens a little bit for me. But I think if you know what you're buying, you'll actually be pretty happy with this lens all round. So I think what we need to do now is loop back to the start. At what point does a 28mm lens become too small and too slow? And I think for me, this lens has just about crossed that line. The perfect lens for me when it comes to 28mm is definitely that Elmarit, and I really do regret selling it, and I'm actively looking to buy another one. This lens though was an awful lot of fun, more fun than I was expecting, and it's actually quite a bit better than I was expecting as well. So if you're interested in this lens, if you've got any questions about it, then let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. And if you've enjoyed this video guys, please do not forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more Fuji, Leica and travel content coming to the channel very, very soon. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers!